Morning, guys! It's the Wizards of Once Twice Magic Chapter 19, Midwinter's End Eve, also known as Fool's Day, One Night Out of Time. And I think it's the last chapter. Dun, dun, dun. So, Sycorax and Encanso turned to their subjects and ordered one night out of time. "Warriors!" cried Queen Sycorax. "Oh, excuse me. For this one night, I decree a ceasefire between the warriors and the wizards to celebrate a historic defeat of an ancient enemy, the witches. The morrow, we return to our battles. The morrow, we carry on our war. But tonight, we feast." "One night out of time," cried King Encanso. The warriors and wizards gave wondering murmurs, for this was most unusual. But the fight had been won, and the word feast acted out on them all like a magical elixir. "One night out of time," the wizards and the warriors cried back to their monarchs, and so began one of the most extraordinary evenings in the history of the Wild Woods. A great bonfire was built in the centre of the courtyard, and the flames burnt red, yellow, and also eerie blues and purples as the druids and the sprites added magical fire to encourage the real flames to burn higher and hotter. Warriors danced with giants, whooping around the fire. The hairy fairies whizzed around in a state of high excitement as everyone made music. Queen Sycorax's warriors blasting out joyful horn noises, Encanso's fiddles hanging in the air magically playing themselves, the giants humming happily, linking arms with each other, the sprites singing their high, bright songs of things too high for the human eye to see, sounds too low for the human ear to hear. The giants sang their giant songs, which rolled out across the landscape. Oh, why, on the last chapter, "I need the space to run my fill. I need to jump from hill to hill. And if you take my woods from me, I'll wander out into the sea and try to find another world so I can live a giant life." The warriors sang their own songs. "No fear, that's the warriors' marching song. No fear, we sing it as we march along. No fear, 'cause the warriors' hearts are strong. Is a warrior heart a wailing? Is a warrior heart a failing? Is a warrior heart a railing? No fear." And the songs of the warriors mingled with the melancholy song of Werewolf. Oh, I'm so sorry. "I'm running for the moon, up to the moon where I can be good, when all the world gives up on me, when everyone thinks bad of me. I still have the moon, it's me and the moon. Mostly it's me and the moon." Well, that's awful. That's a terrible song. Every now and then the werewolf would break off to howl. The sprites rushed around wildly, overexcited, playing tricks on everyone with naughty games like Hinky Punk cast a spell on one of the warriors' bowls of stew, making it rise up into the air and land on his head in a sticky, stewy mess. Tiffenstorm lobbed a softening spell onto some of the warriors' knives and forks, so they went all floppy in their hands, and they couldn't lift their food up to their mouths. Bumbleboozle cast little stopping time spells so that he could nip in and steal everyone's food while time stopped for a blink of a second. And Caliburn flew around, very harassed, trying to stop all these things from happening. Czar and Wish and Bodkin watched them all dancing. "You see," said Wish, "they can get on if they try." "It won't last," said Bodkin gloomily. "Your mother said one night. And when your mother says something, she means it. Tomorrow they're going to be quarrelling and fighting all over again." "Grown-ups are so annoying. They always think they know best. Why won't they listen?" said Wish. Bodkin sighed. "Yes, but it probably is for the best. You will be safer back in warrior territories, Wish. And so I know it's uncomfortable at Common Crag, but now the chief druid has gone, maybe they can find an antidote for the witch stain." Both Czar and Wish looked at him as if they were crazy. "Oh, Bodkin, we're not going back to warrior territories or to Common Crag," said Wish casually. "What? But you promised! You gave said Bodkin. A promise can be broken, said Tsar piously, in pursuit of a higher good. Anyway, they lied to us, and so that promise doesn't count. What are you going to do? Squeaked Bodkin in alarm. One of the many reasons Bodkin wanted to go home was that back in the warrior fort he had Wish all to himself. He and the spoon were her only friends, but out here in the wild woods with that wayward but undeniably charismatic Tsar, Bodkin had to share her. Bodkin told himself it was for Wish's own good, that all he was concerned about in his official capacity as a bodyguard was Wish's health and safety, but he really knew in his heart of hearts that he was ever so slightly, just a little bit jealous, even though, and this made Bodkin very sad, out here in real life, an assistant bodyguard would never end up with a warrior princess, not even a slightly odd one. That was just in fairy stories. We're going to run away while they're all busy celebrating, said Wish. We have to work to do. We have to find the rest of the ingredients for the spell to get rid of the witches. But then Katsu said the spell wouldn't work. Caliban, are you going to let them do this? The old bird flew hither and thither. Yes, the bodyguard is right, said the bird in extreme agitation. It's probably a really, really bad idea. However, Caliban said this without total conviction because, frankly, he had not been looking forward to going back to Gorman Crag either. It was all very well for the bodyguard to speak. He hadn't been there in those dripping, gloomy depths. But then, said Caliban, these adults are making such an almighty mess of things. Maybe we have to put our faith in the children, Bodkin. Crazy, unrealistic and reckless though they are. What did I say earlier? You said because I actually thought it was rather good. I suppose this is such a disaster that it doesn't really matter what we do, as long as we're with all our friends and we do it together, said Wish, checking back in the spelling book. There was a small scuttling sound from behind them, and the werewolf pounced, and when he straightened up, he was carrying in his mouth the creature that once was Luther, who had broken away from the Druid holding him earlier and had been spying on them. The creature that once was Luther was now on his way to sound the alarm and warn everyone that Tsar and Wish were actually planning to run away. For the creature that once was Luther was absolutely 100% determined that Tsar should be going back to Gorman Crag, preferably indefinitely. The bulging-eyed, unknown creature that once was Luther, swinging upside down by his 4 hind legs, looked so absolutely petrified to find himself actually in the jaws of a werewolf that he passed out for a second. Don't worry, whatever you are, said Wish. This is a very nice werewolf, and he wouldn't bite you, would you, Lonesome? Lonesome shook his head, a little too vigorously, but stopped when the creature woke up with the shaking and squeaked fearfully. Grigglebog, apologised Lonesome, and then he added, Grigglebog, Ruggle. This time apologising because Caliban had told him that he shouldn't really be speaking with his mouth full. So, you promised you would tell Encanso what the creature is so he can turn him back into Luther, urged Caliban. And remember what the giant said, you're supposed to be forgiving your enemies. Tsar sighed. He's going to be hopping mad when he gets back to being Luther. Trust me, he's never going to forgive me back. But Wish passed him the spelling book and Tsar tore out the page where it said what Luther was. It was in a section of the book where Tsar had been making up mythical beasts, just beside the section where Tsar had made up a whole lot of stories about the exploits and super deeds of Tsar, Boy of Destiny. And what Luther was, apparently, was a Graxa Turgle Birkin. No wonder they'd never guessed what he was, for Tsar had made that up. Tsar had drawn a rather marvellous picture of the Graxa Turgle Birkin. And they all admitted, for it really was very like the Graxa Turgle Birkin itself, slowly turning a deeper purple as it hung upside down, dripping from the werewolf's mouth. With a flourish, Tsar showed the picture of the Graxa Turgle Birkin to Luther. You actually got away pretty lightly, Luther, said Tsar. You've only been a Graxa Turgle Birkin for 1 month. I was stuck in Gorman Crag for 2 months. The Graxa Turgle Birkin didn't look like it was looking on the bright side of things. Wish wrote a message to her mother on the bottom of the piece of paper, and the message read, I'm sorry we lied to your mother. But the ends justify the means. A fine outcome excuses a bad method. You'll understand when you're older. Tsar wrote beside it a message to his father. I'll be good, father. I promise. And then carefully, Tsar put the torn piece of paper on the ground and got the werewolf to put the Graxoturgle Birkin on top of it. Now he can't move, said Tsar with satisfaction, because it's a windy night, and if he moves, that piece of paper will fly away, and then father won't know what to change him back from again. The Graxoturgle Birkin's eyes bulged with fury, but also alarm. His many little talons gripped that piece of paper for dear life. He squeaked as loud as he could, curses and insults in the Graxoturgle Birkin language. But no one understands Graxoturgle Birkin language, or would hear that squeaking above the sound of merrymaking and dancing. He was stuck there now, to that piece of paper, and he did not dare scuttle or sludge away to sound the alarm. But Tsar was right. There was a look in that Graxoturgle Birkin's eye that said Luther wasn't going to be forgiving Tsar any time in the near or immediate future. We'll never get away, said Bodkin in a last-ditch attempt to change their minds. Encanso and Sycorax are watching you both like hawks. Encanso and Sycorax were indeed clever enough to know not to trust their children's words, so they had been keeping a sharp eye on those little rebels. Sycorax was sitting on a rock, ramrod straight, her face a lofty regal mask, to show she was above such common things as dancing, or indeed celebrating. But every minute or so her eyes snapped across to check that her daughter was there, and that she wasn't escaping with any bad influences, and, maybe, the very tip of her nose was tapping in time to the music. She was, after all, human. And Encanso was prowling in the shadows, his face bleak as midwinter, great storm clouds billowing from his head, muttering under his breath, I can't go back to that dark place. I can never go back. While gripping tight to the wizard's staff, never again, nevermore. And what he meant by that, I have no idea. But every now and then he cast a magical glance over to check that his rascal of a son wasn't running away with Queen Sycorax's dangerous little daughter. Tsar told Crusher that he could join them later at an agreed meeting place because a long-stepper, high-walker giant was a little visible for a stealthy escape. But in the meantime, he said the once sprite perched like a little nightingale on Crusher's shoulder should start up a song. Wish suggested the song choice, and it was an unusual one. It was a song that had not been heard in the wildwoods for many a long year, a song that began like this. I am young, I am poor, I can offer you nothing. All that I have is this bright pair of wings, this air that I eat, these winds that I sleep on, the star path I dance in, where the moon sings. As soon as Sycorax heard the opening words, she turned white as a spirit, and Encanso stopped still and lifted his head. Sycorax marched straight up to the giant and shouted up to the one sprite, Stop singing that song! But Encanso heaved a great sigh as if he could no longer bear it, stepped forward out of the shadows and said, Wait a moment, Sycorax. And then Encanso gave her a look that was a question, and he said, Just one night out of time, for all time's sake? And he held out his hand towards her, and Sycorax paused as the sweet, haunting words floated on the midnight air, for the once sprite had not listened to her, and he was singing on regardless. It was Sycorax's own fault, really, for it was she who had created that voice in her dungeons at Warrior Castle. When she removed the once sprite's magic, beautiful things can be created out of loss and out of pain, and the once sprite's voice, which had always been sweet, now conveyed such a yearning sense of longing for the magic that had been lost, the love that might have been, that it seemed like he was no longer a mere mortal, but a supernatural ghost of a sprite, blown in like a white winter leaf from the underworld, singing the past into the present with such pure intensity that it could even pierce the iron breastplate of the frozen queen herself. See the swift soar, they live well on nothing. You are young, you are strong, if you'll give me your hand. We'll leave earth entirely and never go back there. We'll sleep on the breezes and never touch land. It is true. The giant's story about Encanso and my mother, whatever she may say, whispered Wishes triumphantly, looking at her mother's white face, which was unfreezing just a tiny, tiny fraction, as she listened to the music. I knew it. Otherwise it would not affect her like this. I promise you gales and a merry adventure will fly on forever and never will part. I am young, I am poor, I can offer you nothing, nothing but love and the beat of my heart, sang the voice of the once sprite. He sang with a little less melancholy than he had before in Queen Sycorax's dungeons, because the once sprite had found a new life as a spell raider. But there was still an overpowering bitter sweetness to the song that was hauntingly seductive. Sycorax, diamond-hard Sycorax, could not resist. It was Midwinter's End Eve, after all, and what happened on Midwinter's End Eve did not really count. Even a queen can be a fool on Midwinter's End Eve. Queen Sycorax reached out her own hand and touched Encanzo's. For old time's sake, they both bowed, very regal, very courtly, very stiff, and they began to dance. They danced a little more stiffly than they might have done once. Time had tempered them, just as bendy little saplings harden into immovable tree trunks. Fine lines had traced their way across their faces, but their eyes were the same eyes that had gazed out on the world a couple of decades before. One pair a fierce blue, the other a wild grey. The two of them danced, and they were lost in the music for one fatal moment. The song took them up into the air like the swifts out of time where there were no rules. And in that fatal moment the children left, tiptoeing out of the courtyard. Crusher gave them the broken door, which he had kept in his pocket. So engrossed were the adults in their dancing and their merrymaking and eating and singing that nobody noticed the broken door soaring off quietly into the night. It was Midwinter's End Eve, ages long ago. In a British Isle so old it did not know it was the British Isles yet. A broken door soaring high through the quietness of the midnight sky, like a small flying carpet. 3 children, all 13 years old, poised in that moment, between childhood and adulthood, lying on their backs, looking up at the stars, a talking raven perched on Wish's foot, a spoon lying fast asleep on her heart, sprites joyously swooping, diving and buzzing around them. Down below them, 3 snowcats, a werewolf, a bear, and a pack of wolves, running softly, quietly, footsteps disappearing, magically as they ran, in a spell cast by Ariel. After a while, a peaceful contemplation, Wish sat up and peered over the edge of the door. All right, we couldn't persuade our parents to join us, but let's not forget that we're doing really well, said Wish. The werewolf has learnt some manners. The once sprite is happy, and now he's a spell raider, and Zara is making definite progress in being good. He still has some way to go, said Caliburn, a trifle gloomily, for once Encanzo had the power to set Caliburn and Ariel free. And we do have absolutely no idea where we're going now, pointed out Bodkin. Zara's arm was burning, and it gave him an idea. He sat up and opened the spelling book onto the pages with the spell to get rid of witches, and then he gave Wish Caliburn's feather. Write, urged Zara. Write down the next ingredient. Think as hard as you can and write. Oh, that won't work, said Wish, dipping the feather in the ink. I've tried that so many times before, and it just won't work. Oh! To her astonishment, the feather, warm in her hands, began to write, almost as if by itself. 4 scales of the Nuka-Levy from the western whirlpools, read Bodkin in growing horror, and 5 tiers of the Rood from the labyrinth of the Lake of the Lost. Is there any more? Asked Zara. No, that seems to be it, said Wish, for whatever had animated the feather had run out, and all she was making now were a series of unintelligible blotches. I knew it! We have the last ingredients in our quest, said Zara, punching the air in the excitement. Key! He said to the key, who was now steering them from the lock of the punishment cupboard. Turn due southeast. Next stop, the Lake of the Lost. What? Cried Bodkin, waving his arms around in horror. But the Lake of the Lost is the Druid stronghold. We can't go there. It's a suicide mission. We can't go in there. Didn't you learn anything at all from the giant's last breath story? Pentaglion just took 2 tiers of the Druid. Those scary Druids came and destroyed his old castle and the giant. And we're thinking of taking 5. They're not listening to me, Cal Caliburn. They're not listening. Trying to control the uncontrollable little princess was bad enough, but trying to control both her and Tsar together, well, it's impossible, moaned Bodkin, lying back on the door and putting his helmet over his head. Both Tsar and Wish were not paying attention to such gloomy thinking. They were excitedly surveying the spell to get rid of witches. "We'll get rid of those witches in no time at this rate," said Wish with great enthusiasm. "Let's put a tick against the ingredients we've already got to make us feel like we're progressing. We've got the tears of the Queen and the witch feathers." "Yes, but I'm most annoyed that we've lost our first and most important ingredient in this spell to get rid of the witches by using it on the Drood," said Tsar. "The moral of that is worrying me," said Caliburn. "The giant's last words were about forgiveness, but it was the breath of forgiveness that actually got rid of the Drood in the end. So how does that work?" This is the problem with stories. Stories always mean something. The question is, what exactly do they mean? It means we're going to have to start all over again, finding another giant's last breath before we can find anything else, said Tsar. It's very annoying. Squeeze Juice hovered joyfully above them. "You don't have to start again," said Squeeze Juice. "I has a secret that I hasn't told anybody. I saved the day without anybody realising it." "Nonsense," hissed Tiffenstorm. "An insignificant little fairy like you can never save the day." "I has," said Squeeze Juice triumphantly. He paused for effect. "There's a tiny little bit of the breath left in the bottles. I saves it. I put the stopper back in just in time." Tsar got out the collecting bottle, and there was the very, very faint whisper of green smoke in the centre of it, the last remains of the giant's last breath. "You sees, I mays be smalls, but I is mighty. I is not too tiny to be a spell waiter after all," crowed Squeeze Juice. "You certainly are not," said Tsar heartily. "That was extremely quick thinking of you. For this, Squeeze Juice, I may not only officially make you Spell Raider, but the chief Spell Raider of our entire team," said Tsar. And the little hairy fairy was so overcome with excitement that he blew up like a puffer fish and turned 3 cartwheels in a row and collapsed panting on Wish's shoulder. The spoon, who had woken up, gave him a celebratory bow. "And look," said Wish, "I can now tick off 3 of the ingredients, and there are only 2 more to collect." Wish lay back down on the door with a sigh of satisfaction and went back to dreamily surveying the stars. "The universe is sending us a sign. Look, I'm sure that star up there is winking at us." And indeed, one of the stars did seem to be blinking on and off at them. "Is it winking in a friendly way, though, or in a laughing at us way?" worried Caliburn. "Is it a good sign or a bad one? Are we really only being led by Tsar's witch stain and escaping from your parents for a second time? Look, the witch stain is worse than ever. How can we know if Tsar is ever going to be able to control or get rid of it?" Tsar's hand was indeed still burning green in the moonlight. "We'll just have to believe and hope that he can," said Wish simply. "If we believe in Tsar hard enough, then we'll find our way to a happy ending." "But you only think that because you're young and don't know any better," agonised Caliburn. "When you're young, you think that love conquers everything. You don't know the problems it can cause. You haven't seen the times where the witches triumph, there is no second life, and the werewolf dies." "Well, I never want to grow up then," said Wish. "I want to stay young forever. You know, I'm right anyway, Caliburn. It's why you came with us and you didn't betray us to our parents." "And if you want to stay with us, Caliburn, you have to stop being so negative," said Tsar. "Wish is right. It's a good sign. It's a sign that everything will be all right in the end." Excuse me. Caliburn sighed. Some of his thoughts he kept to himself, about love, for example. For as they lay on the door, the key swivelling happily in the lock was looking longingly at the spoon, and the fork was looking longingly at the key, and it was not so very different from the longing way Bodkin looked at Wish sometimes, and the longing way Wish looked at Tsar. There may be trouble ahead, thought Caliburn. Who knows if Wish and Tsar were right on that midnight long ago, for there would be storms tomorrow. There is no doubt. But if we worry too much about tomorrow, how can we enjoy today? So let us leave our heroes there in the happiness of now, soaring gloriously through the sky in the triumph and satisfaction of a quest completed. And in that blink of a moment before another quest begins, and let us leave the grown-ups dancing. In a while they will discover their children gone, the birds have flown, and then there will be tears and rending of clothes and wringing of hands and warriors blaming wizards and wizards cursing warriors, and their war and their worrying will begin again anew. But for now they are dancing, in a moment, out of time. So let us enjoy that moment, lost in the music, a small, sweet, bittersweet smile on Queen Sycorax's face, for she knows this is a stolen time. In that moment, Sycorax and Encanto are young again, free from all parental regal responsibilities of being mothers, fathers, monarchs. In that moment, they have no tribes to run, worlds to conquer, countries to rule, traditions to uphold. They have earned those moments, the poor parents, just a few minutes to go back into the past and unbend, relax for an eye blink or two, to be once more a young warrior princess who has just met a wizard in the wood. The once sprite is singing a different song now, another unforbidden one. Once we were wizards wandering free in roads of sky and paths of sea, and in that timeless long ago hour, words of nonsense still had power. Doors still flew and birds still talked, witches grinned and giants walked. We had magical wands and magical wings, and we lost our hearts to impossible things, unbelievable thoughts, unsensible ends, for wizards and warriors might be friends. In a world where impossible things are true, I don't know why we forgot the spell. When we lost the way, how the forest fell. But now we are old, we can vanish too. And I see once more the invisible track that will lead us home and take us back. So find your wands and spread your wings. I'll sing our love of impossible things. And when you take my vanished hand, we'll both go back to that magic land where we lost our hearts several lifetimes ago, when we were wizards once. Dance on, Sycorax. Fly on, Door, through the quiet night. With the three young heroes lying on their backs, looking up at the stars, and a very pleased with himself little hairy fairy, buzzing on Tsar's chest with his ear to the collecting bottle in Tsar's breast pocket, whispering to himself, I saved the day! Me! Squeeze Juice! The smallest of them all has saved the day! For it was definitely the final fragments of the giant's last breath in there. There was absolutely no doubt about it. If you held the bottle up to your ear, extremely close, you could still hear it very, very faintly like an echo. Forgive them, the echo whispered. Forgive them. Now, that is the actual end of the book. But there is an epilogue. But I've been reading for half an hour. So, do I continue? What do you think? Okay. My voice is getting sore though. Epilogue 1. 2 weeks later. Many fathoms down, far further than 5, for the ocean was terribly deep at the bottom of the cliffs of eternity, lay the ball of iron that enclosed the Kingwitch on a bed of coral. The ball of iron was silent, still, but then from within it there came a faint, muffled scraping of talons against something metal, and the ball of iron began to move. Softly at first, and then a little faster. The Kingwitch hadn't died. He was in there. He would keep scratching. He had a little magic that works on iron, and he would keep using that magic to break out of his iron prison. The Kingwitch was nothing if not patient. In the meantime, he rolled over the watery landscape of the bottom of the ocean steadily, gradually, like a dark malignant glacier, or a slow but certain fate. Epilogue 2. So that was the story of a word that froze, a heart that soared, a boy that flew, a girl who roared. Have you guessed which of the characters in the story I am yet? I could be any of them. Wish, Tsar, Caliburn the raven who has lived many times, Bodkin the assistant bodyguard who wished he was a hero, or Crusher the dreamy long-stepper, high walker giant. Any one of the sprites, or hairy fairies, any of the characters at all. Not Eleanor Rose or the werewolf. I couldn't be either of them because they weren't in the first book, so that would be cheating. And the narrator can be tricky, but they should not actually cheat. Otherwise, it's extremely annoying on the reader. I still can't tell you who I am, I'm afraid, for as you see, the story has not yet ended. I can only tell you at the end, but the end is getting closer. Wish and Tsar's stars have crossed for the second unlikely time, and for good or for evil, their stars are now joined together, and they're travelling in the same, very dangerous direction. I left them, peacefully enjoying the present. One of the reasons that looking into the future or dwelling too much on the past are such dangerous practices is that what we see there might stop us enjoying the excitement and pleasures of the now. But pity me, for I have the curse of being able to see into the future. And although they do not know it yet, that door our heroes are lying on so peacefully is headed towards the Lake of the Lost, which, as Bodkin pointed out, is the Druid stronghold. And Druids are unrelenting, unforgiving, and the greatest wizards in the Wildwoods, and they will want to obliterate anyone who has magic mixed with iron. The Emperor of the Warriors will be told by the Witch Smeller about Sycorax's daughter, and he too will want to eliminate the threat posed to the warrior world by magic mixed with iron. Encanso and Sycorax will be chasing Tsar and Wish, but Encanso is in trouble with the Druids himself, and Sycorax is in trouble with the Emperor of the Warriors, and everyone will be chasing everyone else. The forces of darkness will be closing in on our young hero, but worst of all, the King Witch will be after them both, and he will not rest until he gets them, and he has a single piece of tiny blue dust that he thinks he may find helpful. Can Wish and Tsar break out of the sad circles of the history of the Wildwoods? They are young, they are hopeful. Can they really write their own story? Is that even possible? Keep hoping, keep guessing, keep dreaming. The unknown narrator. Have you worked out who the narrator is yet? That is the end of Twice Magic. Have no fear, because down here, starting tomorrow, we have, let me just get it out, ready and waiting. Let me unwrap it. The next one. Dun, dun, dun. Knock 3 times. So you don't have to wait too long. It is here. It has arrived. So there you go. I will see you tomorrow for the next book. Bye-bye.